Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to this latest edition of Friday Focus for the summer of 2025. This is, again, a recorded version. We'll get back to some live versions in September. But just welcome for you to join us. Thank you for joining us this morning. This is Friday, the 5th of September, when this is going out. I hope you've had a productive summer. Some people have been working all the way through. Others have taken a break, and the time for break will come along the way. But we've delved into some various subjects through the summer. And thanks to those that have partaken in the conversation, and really encourage you that if wherever you are, whether you're on LinkedIn or YouTube or Substack or Spotify, if you want to get involved in the conversation, please do send us a note. Several people have been emailing and sending notes over the summer to get involved in the conversation, and that has been our tagline as we've talked our way through the summer, to join the conversation. The subjects that we seek to talk about are hopefully ones that resonate with what you're doing professionally, in your classroom, in your leadership practice, across the globe. So thank you for joining with us again. We appreciate you being here. And so this morning we've invited back a guest who spoke to us almost a year ago, or in fact just more than a year ago. Last summer we had a conversation with Matt Pittman at the publication of his book, The Connection Curriculum. Now we are just on the verge of his new book. In fact, it's going to be published on the 27th of August. So if you're listening to this on the 5th of September, it will already be out. But he's come back to talk about The Connection Conundrum, which is the follow-up book from his first one. But let me just bring Matt to the stage. Matt, welcome back. It's lovely to have you back again. How have things been over this last year?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It's nice to be back. I think it was pretty much a year ago. Yeah, things are good. I think it's a tough time for education. Probably said a similar thing last year. Slightly different, small challenges, same big challenges. I'm in a new school, or a new school for me, I should say, and in a different leadership role, and just, again, trying to just cultivate some experience so that I can pass on a lot of different skills and things to the students and to staff that I lead. So look, things are great, and it's to be here again, chatting to you a year later and have another book. Not something I predicted, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing now after it's out.
Yes. It's the heartache of writing. I mean, you enjoy writing, so it's not. But it's the pressure of pulling together ideas and representing those to people. That's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's writing after sort of doing what I've done study-wise and all of those things. Like, it's a different kind of writing, but I'm learning a lot about marketing and what works and what doesn't. And that's certainly a new skill set that I'm enjoying the challenge. But as a teacher, you don't really have to market too much. Perhaps as a leader, you have to market occasionally. But you usually hand that over to staff that have the skills and maybe the degrees to make that happen. But it's opened some doors, and not just in terms of these conversations and getting to chat to people like yourself, but just for personal learning. Like, what an awesome experience to be able to go through and take education into a slightly different interest area and industry. And yeah, it's been a real experience and a journey, and I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to do it.
I did, just on that marketing part, I've been listening over the summer to some stuff on marketing, and even marketeers are saying that the world is changing, that the practices they're being used to are having to to alter because people's diet, people's accessing products and services, and you know, as an educator, you know, what we're actually telling the parents and the community about what we're doing at school it's changing, isn't it? So it's a live environment.
Yeah, I think probably the word dynamic gets overused in almost every aspect of life, but it's just, you know, I used to, and I still do, to be honest. So one of the best things about still being able to be in the classroom, and that's one of the most excellent things about my current position, is that I still teach a handful of classes, but it's just that's where the unpredictable happens, and that's what learning is. It requires it requires a catalyst, and that's probably a lack of catalyst is probably what is leading to perhaps a little bit of stagnation, which is creating challenges in itself.
And just following from that, because normally my first question to guests is, tell us the journey to now. Now we've heard a little of your story, but you made the decision to change your working environment. You've moved from one school. Tell us a little about, because we didn't get into sort of deep around your schools, and this is not here to advertise your school as such, but tell us about the difference between the schools that that decision to move.
Yeah, so I think I think it's been 6 different schools that I've worked at over my 15 years. And yeah, that seems about right. You know, you say something and you put it in the world and then you go, I might be miscounting, but 6 feels right. I was having this discussion with somebody because it's a lot of schools at the moment are going through, in Australia or in Victoria, where I am, are going through their process of the leadership tenures are coming to an end. And so they're re-upping their roles and people are applying and whatever it may be. And so we're talking about journeys. And I guess one of the things that I've always been worried about, or most recently with some of these interviews for new positions, and particularly this for the job I have now, has always been justifying change and why I have moved, or why I haven't been at a school for a decade, or, you know, and I guess being concerned about showing loyalty in the most traditional sense. And I guess the way I summed it up in this conversation, and the way I think I will continue to think about it, is that I have tried to look for opportunities to lead in different ways and through different portfolios and different roles, so that I am best equipped to help the students with the unpredictable nature of everything that we ask them to do and everything that'll be asked for them to do in the future. And so I am the best leader and I am the best teacher when I am really engaged and I am learning and I am curious about, you know, coming in every day and finding creative solutions. And I just find if I'm in a place for too long, then I lose that creativity. I think, you know, last year I was at Global Village Learning, which is is a catalyst in itself. And it's this brilliant idea and this amazing environment of this core group of people that really want to create change. And they're building this purpose-built, which is not the right way to describe it, because it's so dynamic and so flexible day to day. But it is the purpose there is learning, and they're designing something for a very small community, and then they're going to have all these hubs, and that's very exciting to me. And it was such an honor to be part of, you know, the initial kind of stages of that, or to come in, you know, in that first year. But it was, I think, one of the things that I talk about, and I definitely, you know, the second book's only just coming out tomorrow as we record this, as you said. But in the first book, I'm talking about changing schools, not working within something that is already driving change and is already building that model. And there was just this opportunity to not only come into a school that is growing and has gone, has grown in enrollments every single year for like the past decade. I think they started with 1 or 2 classes 16, 17 years ago, and now they're up to 1,100 students, and it's just a massive growth area. It was something that I came across, or my wife actually found the ad and said, have a look at this job. It was one interview I went for and I managed to get it, and it just feels very fortuitous that it's all coming together, and they have a real focus on trying to connect families, and that's what my doctorate is on. So that's a great data set. And I guess it's just, I'm trying not to worry about being the leader that sits in the chair for X amount of years. I'm trying to make sure that I'm constantly engaging my own curiosity, and I want to be the best fit for where I am. And in many respects, I feel like I'm probably better where I am right now at this school. And hopefully I'm having the things that I learned at Global Village, I'm bringing in, and then hopefully we'll be able to do it at scale, or at least introduce some components of that at scale and make the change that we're all talking about and that we're all wishing for, and make it reality so that the kids and the students, the staff, the parents, everyone can enjoy that connection to learning that perhaps, I feel has probably drifted away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really interesting kind of journey story, and I talk a lot. I don't know if you've seen the video set, or it came out around 2003. It was called Shift Happens, and this idea that people's work lives are changing over the next 70 years. It's not going to be I go into a career and stay there, or go into one organization and stay there for forever. What you're talking about, many educators do. They do move from school to school, but you're talking about an intentionality that's different. I'm going into a different situation to be different, to learn in a different environment, to absorb what's going on and challenges that are different from my previous examples, and how would I respond in that? And that's really how children are going to face their futures, because life is going to be very much like that.
Yeah, correct. And I think that's something I'm the head of senior school in my current role, and that's something I say to our senior students. They're looking very much to what subjects and things should I pick based on what pathway I might want to do, and I always, for the past probably 5 years, I've shifted from that typical, what do you want to do? What do you want to study at university so you can do what job? And now it's just like, what do you want to do first? It's not about what career do you want to move into. And, I've shifted positions to keep that interesting. And there's other reasons for shifting positions as well. I don't want to make it sound like I'm, I've figured it out and I'm only moving with purpose. There are other reasons as well, but
that's life, though, isn't it, Matt? That life happens.
Right.
That's the reality.
Yeah, and I think, and that's something I'd try to instill in the students, especially in the senior school, is that it's not about. Not everyone is going to find that thing and be able to perhaps shift and move up positions and climb the ladder or whatever it might be. It might be that you just do something for now, and then you'll do something else and something else, and then maybe you'll find something that becomes a longer term prospect. Maybe you won't. As long as you're happy and you're able to support yourself, and in whatever, again, capacity that might look like, that's the goal. And I think that's probably the key to a happy life for young people today. And one of the things that we need to probably do better, I truly think, is focus on adding value today. And that's one of the things I talk about in this new book, is we're a bit stuck talking about a future that we don't know. And we and there's lots of predictions, and there's some much smarter than people than me that are putting together some incredible data, and some of that is likely to come to be, but if I was a student sitting in a classroom now and I walked away thinking, what do I do with this now? And I couldn't come up with an answer, I'd feel really disengaged as well. And I think that's the biggest shift in schooling with this new couple of generations of kids, is they want now, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. And, you know, there's arguments to be made for some of the, you know, the interaction with technology and needing answers immediately and dopamine hits and all those kind of things that everyone's talking about. But it, you know, that's not, we're sitting and waiting for that to change rather than changing within that system. And I think last year when we were chatting, that was kind of the core idea of the connection curriculum. Stop waiting for the system to change and make change within the system. And very, in much the same vein, here we are again with perhaps bringing in the funnel a little bit, and there's some different smaller challenges, but stop waiting and just give yourself permission to make change so that the students benefit today rather than hopefully sometime down the track. And connection to learning and giving them something they can use tonight when they go home, or at least be excited to share, as much as a teenager who I work with in a secondary school, obviously. Teenagers don't share anything, but when they're excited, they're still young enough to go home and share something. And that's connection. And that's what we need to be focusing on. And I'll keep yelling it until I can't yell it anymore.
So you wrote the first book, so the connection curriculum, with these strong ideas about how curriculum needs relevance and it needs connection with the people that are engaged with it. So tell us the story of how you came to the connection conundrum, because you kind of referred to a little bit there in what you've just said. But so what was the reaction to the first book, and why have you come to the second? The second
reaction to the first book was really much bigger and more positive than I thought, and not really knowing what to expect. Everything was a surprise, but there was a lot of conversations, a lot of opportunity to dive into connection and bring it, perhaps through the way I'm describing it and the modeling I'm using. An opportunity to share some ideas and some maybe a change of perspective, rather than everything in that book was new. It was just framed in a different way. But it created a lot of discourse and a lot of conversation and a lot of frustration, which I actually thought was really good. I think frustration is one of the things that starts change. And certainly if you can read this little book that some Australian teacher wrote and then it makes you frustrated because you might agree with things in the book and you're not seeing it, that works for me. I think if you can then go in your school and have a chat about it, like, that's the goal. And so there was a lot of those things happening, and I had a lot of really brilliant feedback from some very generous people. But I started to have, it started with one conversation, and then it just became a bit of a pattern of conversations with teachers in particular, and some learning support staff but people in the classroom. And they were frustrated that they wanted to action some of these things. And so the connection curriculum was big and broad, and it was about schools. So instead of seeing your school as part of the system, just focus on your school. But if your school is like mine and you have 1,000+ students and over 100 staff and double that in parents, like, that's still quite a big thing to manage. And so for teachers, if their leaders weren't ready to commit or make those changes, that was creating some frustration, because they were, I hate to use the word inspired, but they read something, they liked what they read, they wanted to do something different, but they just didn't have the scope to do it. And I understand why leaders might be hesitant to add another change. I think in the book I explain why this is not the case, but I understand. From a leadership perspective, I get it. But then I just kept having this conversation, and I thought, there's got to be a way that the teachers can create some of this change, or at least put something together so that they can model and use their own experience and a bit of really contextual live data in their classrooms to prove that this is the way forward. And I just started writing some ideas. And I think originally it was just going to be maybe something on LinkedIn or some posts on my website or whatever it might be. And I just kept writing, and it got bigger and bigger. And then I spoke to my publisher and said, it's been, I think it had only been like 5 months or something really ridiculous. I think I have another book. And, we had a discussion about, what's a good spacing for another book and all of those things. And I said, yes, I don't know these things. You've got to trust your people. But I just kept writing in the background. And I got to about, I think it was maybe March, and it started to look like I had a book. It was way too long, and it was very bloated, and there was lots of probably big ideas. Maybe some of them were a bit unsubstantiated, so I got rid of them. But it just turned into a book, and then it started to expand on the connection curriculum and take it kind of in this more specific way and focusing in on the classroom. And so now I have this second book, and it's, I guess, the pressure. I mean, it's publishes tomorrow officially. I'm a bit stressed about having written for a very specific audience. Like, it's still a broad audience, but I picture those people I had those discussions with. And that's a bit stressful because the first book, I didn't know if I could write a book. The pressure was off. And now I've decided to come back. Like, it has to be decent, doesn't it? But no, that's the story. Like, honestly, I was inspired by people who shared, and I think that's been the biggest gift of the book, is not just that people have taken the time to read it, but that they have shared that they've read it and that it's proved useful. And I think that's the ultimate goal with a book, isn't it? It's not something that's I'm not aiming to get on the New York Times bestseller list with a book for teachers. I don't know if that's even possible, but it's, to have change in 1 or 2 classrooms. What a gift. It's been,
I think you underplay your impact there, Matt. I mean, the fact that teachers are reading it and coming back and asking questions, just before, we will need to break in a second just for a moment, but maybe just help us with an example of some of the things that people have said to you about the first book, because you talk about it's my school isn't there ready for it yet. So a teacher in a classroom that wants to do some of these things, but that it's not working in the environment. Just give us some sort of thoughts on what people are doing, or what your connection conundrum is sort of speaking to.
So the connection conundrum is about knowing that connection and people, who are the core of connection, should be at the center of everything we do. But then they're not. They're on the outskirts, and we have in the middle, we have policy, procedure, we have marks and scores and ranks and traditional school stuff that, I think is a product or an assessment of learning, or it should be far out on the fringes. It shouldn't ever be the center of the target. And so the conundrum is that we know that this is not right, and that people should be the center. In fact, I think if you went to most school websites, they'd probably say people are at the center, but the model and the system doesn't really reflect that. And so the conundrum came out of this discussions with those teachers who were saying, we want to put connection at the center of everything we do. We want to build our strategic plan around connection, and we want it to be people first, and then that is the perspective through which we look at all of the changes that need to be made. But instead, it's the opposite, and the changes are being made first, and then the impact on the people is being measured. And that's just not going to work if we really want our schools to be communities again. So the conundrum is, we have this problem and we know what the problem is, but we're just not answering it. We're instead of answering the puzzle that we have, we're putting that to the side and hoping that if we do this puzzle over here, this one will sort itself out too. And then we'll have the benefit of two things. Yeah. And that's just not the case. And so the biggest thing was, teachers don't have a lot of access to strategic planning. They don't have a lot of impact on those discussions that happen at the leadership table at the boardroom. And so when you get a collection of really keen educators who want to be a part of decision-making processes but feel like they can't be, then they have to be empowered to work within the space they do have. And that space is their classroom. And they have an active community of students in there. And they have this ability to build a partnership rather than the teacher versus the students, or the students versus the teachers. And so it's, let's focus on building 50 little communities and then bringing all of those working communities together, and then showing those at the table that are fortunate enough to have the leadership positions. This works. We're doing it already, and we're doing it while our strategic focus is all these other things. If we were to shift the focus, imagine what we could do then.
It's such a powerful view, and I know from my days in leadership, you could walk the school and you knew that there were some people who just had that, what you've described, that innate connection with the children and to a certain extent the parents, because those conversations are good, and their curriculum material, what they were doing, there was that kind of gelling, and you'd go to another room where there was none of it, and they're doing the same job, they're doing it with the same groups of children, but there was just that innate ability to connect with the young people, or to connect in such a way that the curriculum made sense to the young people. And as you said, they go away excited and willing to share. And it's that, how do we get to those people to encourage them that there is a different way, there's a different model that you can, and it's to do with the presets and what we see as the motivator. That to me, that's what I read from your material, and certainly that's in my experience of.
Yeah, and I mean, sounds good to me. Like, it's just about, I think we have most of the tools we need, and I say most because I'm well aware that there are schools who have little and there are schools who have a lot, and it is certainly not equitable. I don't think in any part of the world. No. But people are the most precious resource, and we have this need. It's a biological, neurological need to be close to other people and to share experiences and to feel like we are part of something. This is where one of the examples in the Connection Conundrum I use is online gaming, and it has some negatives. Like, I'm not going to shy away from that, but there are people who feel isolated from a lot of the world, and some of that is because of choices and decisions, but some of that is because the world isn't for everyone, and we haven't created an equitable world, and not everyone enjoys it. But here's a space where a group of people with a shared interest seek belonging, and again, it's not perfect, but that is connection. That's connection to something, and it's seeking out that when it's not something that you can get face to face. It's seeking it out. Now, there's not all of the online world works in the favor of connection. There are patches of it that work. This has allowed us to connect, where certainly this would not be possible. Now, is it perfect? No, but it provides something in a moment that then carries on a year later. Here we are.
Yeah.
And that conversation has continued. And that's because we understand that this tool, what it can allow us to do as people. And this is what schools need to embrace too. We're getting lost in the tools, lost in the method, instead of focusing on what are the people who are interacting with these tools, these methods, this pedagogy, what is their input, and then what is the desired output, and what is to gain in the middle, and what is to gain for everyone. Parents can have, they can gain from a child's education, the child obviously, and staff are leaving the profession, and one of the reasons is it doesn't feel fulfilling. And there are days when I empathize with that. There are days that don't feel very fulfilling at all. And sometimes it feels like there are more of them than there ever has been.
Yeah.
But every now and then a person at my school will remind me the value of being connected to this profession. It's not a tool. It's not a shiny new classroom. It's not, a new resource. It's not an extension on a budget, even though they're great. It's a person. And this is why the focus needs to be on addressing this conundrum and seeking an answer that works with people first, and not in a marketing way, not in a enrollment way, but in a genuine, we want to improve the situation for everyone that is connected to this school.
Yeah.
And the online gaming community kind of got me thinking down that line. What is the draw to this, especially when there are nasty things that are happening online? Why do people keep coming back? And it's because in amongst that it's about people.
Yeah. And
so schools can learn a lot from these random examples.
They're really powerful, Matt. I know, even from my own family, my own children. I actually was talking to my daughter this last week, and they're motivated to learn Romanian because they've been playing an online game with a group of people, and actually the community they've met, so although they might be in different countries around the world, they're making the opportunity to meet. So I can resonate with what you're saying, that there is positive that comes from these things. I was just thinking, I did a training session with some education leaders. It's a few years ago now, but I asked them, so these were local authority trainers, educators, school improvement advisors and so on. And I asked them, what was your most significantly, or most memorable activity that you did in school? And I gave them a few minutes to consider it, and all of them, they came to something. And I was intrigued when I said, okay, so now you've got something, just let's go around the room and talk about what you've been around this for 35, 40 years. So what was the most important thing that you still remember? And, not one of them was a classroom experience. It was a trip or a visit or a relationship or a favorite teacher or something that none of them were I said, they probably sat through 10,000 hours of learning experiences, but none of you have looked back to that and said, that piece of history or that piece of that mathematical, it was all experiences, other things that were going on. And they kind of walked away and said, so what is it that we're building? And that it really speaks to what you're saying. It's that kind of connection. So we're so focused on, is the classroom experience the best that it can be? But actually, it's it's all. But of course, we want that to be that. But it's all of the things that are around the education process, and are we setting children up for all of that? It's really fascinating. So that example of the online learning is, or at least gaming is it's intriguing, isn't it? And then how that can be used.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's when you come to a realization like that, I think you go back into your own schooling and you do. The things you remember are the excursions or the field trips, random funny events that came as a surprise, and you remember people. Yeah. And there's a reason, that most teachers come to the profession, and when they're asked why they're here, they say, oh, because of a teacher.
Yeah.
And it's because of connection.
Yeah.
You remember funny events because they take whoever experienced it, friends or enemies, and it connects them to something that's just happened.
Yeah.
And then, it's just, it all comes back to connection, everything we remember, and it's always people. And you might not remember faces or names. Certainly when I run into former students and they're very excited to see me, and I go into the internal panic as I go through the names
Yes.
in my head of who they may be. I know who they are, but I don't remember the name. And then it comes to you, and it's not just a sense of relief when you remember that name. It's just a rush of, I don't know, like it's a reward. You're reconnecting something from what could have been one classroom moment. And this is, this is the power of people and connection. And this is, why we seek it out in every opportunity, and people seek out friendships and relationships and all of these things, and family, because we want to. There's a certain thing that we can only get from other humans. And there's just such an opportunity for that to be built at schools. And to have more of those memories and more of those connective people that inspire, rather than, the opposite, which is very much what, some of the students are feeling at the moment. They're feeling like the teacher is there as kind of the warden.
And that's that you're curating a whole load of knowledge which is not connected to them. There's work to do on that. Matt, we do need just to pause for a second for the usual. So we'll come back on that in a second. So look, you're here, and we're grateful that you are, and you're listening to the conversation, and thank you for that. If you're here on LinkedIn, this is a recorded session, so normally we would bring live comments to the screen, but as a recorded session, if you want to ask questions, or if you want to connect with Matt, or you want to know more about the book, we'll talk about some of how you get to the book later. But please do engage in the conversation in the comments below the post, either here on LinkedIn or on YouTube. Do the same. Please press like and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're on LinkedIn, like, because just pressing that button will open the door to other people hearing and seeing the conversation. So it'd be not just for us to grow the number of people, but get others involved in the conversation. If you're listening on Substack, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, if you follow and rate the show, then we can bring these discussions to leaders like you a bit further afield. So it'd be really valuable for us. Please like, share, subscribe, get involved in the conversation, join this conversation around making our schools better places for the young people that we're working with. I do just want to give a shout out to we're talking about Matt's book, The Connection Conundrum. Last time we had, two sessions ago, we had Bernie Godwin on talking about her book. And so Bernie Godwin and Danny Silk, Loving Our Students on Purpose, again, very linked to what Matt is talking about. So if you haven't seen that one already, please go and find Bernie Godwin and that looking at the whole issue of behavior and building a culture of joy, responsibility, and connection. And I just want to preempt a conversation that we're planning for September. So Marcelo Starikoff, The Joy of Not Knowing. If you haven't seen this yet, please get yourself into the conversation around the joy of not knowing. Again, very linked to the conversations that we've had. It's really interesting that people that are kind of coming around this whole conversation around engaging with young people and connecting on a different level, not just simply academic prowess, but really engaging with every learner as an individual and their life potential. So please, Marcelo will be joining us in September. If you haven't seen Bernie Godwin, please go and on my profile or on YouTube, you'll find the Friday Focus that we did back in August, early August, with Bernie. Please, if you like, share and subscribe. That's what people have done. That's what's got these people involved in the conversation. Come and join us and get involved in the conversation. Matt, coming back to the connection conundrum. You've talked about changing school. We've talked about this whole thing of the children. Every time I have this conversation, I think back. So I remember an interview I did with a member of staff, and they sat in the chair and said, I love my subject. I'm here to teach my subject. I want to teach the subject. And the thing that came into my mind was, well, actually, you're here to teach children. You're not here to teach a subject. You're here to teach children. And so I asked that question. So actually, you're not here to teach your subject. You're here to teach children. And his answer was, I hate kids. I hate children. I said, well, why are you here for a job in a job interview? He said, well, I want to teach my subject. I said, well, you can go and do that in a university, or you're not. If you don't like children, then why are you here? And I won't. Sorry,
it's bizarre. I'm a bit. I think you hear these stories, but like there's always a suspicion that maybe this teacher isn't a massive fan of the students, but they really are passionate about their subject. I just think I don't think I could pull myself out of bed and off to work, to go and just teach a subject, because I'm just imagining tables in rows and students just sitting there and just not engaging, and you may as well just get a whiteboard delivered to your house and deliver it to the dog. Like if you just want to lecture, start a YouTube channel, and do you know what? The students will probably benefit from your YouTube videos without you knowing, and then you're kind of doing both. But to stand in front of a bunch of teenagers and not have any interest in them as people is odd. I think that's, or it's very brave. I don't know. I don't know which one it is.
I think it's odd personally, and I just I will say we didn't appoint the man, so that was a makers. We've talked about big schools and small schools and challenging schools, and in challenging schools, I would suggest relationship comes first. If you don't build relationship, you're never going to get them through the door. And that's the key. So look, I'm going to not put you on the spot, but so what in your school? What does it look like? What do you champion with your staff? How you see, because you live this idea. You're not. It's not just a theory, as we've just mentioned. What does it look like? How does it feel?
So I guess in my position, I start with my staff and especially the year level coordinators, who are just your connection to families. They are, one of the first places that, issues or things of merit or whatever it might be, that's where they go. And so there are your most powerful middle leaders in the school. They're across everything. They're across your teaching and learning and your well-being and your pastoral and whatever it might be. They're superhuman. And so I start by building their capacity to lead their teams. And so my job as the leader is to connect with them and find out, what are your strengths? What do you want to work on? And it really is important that it's not my observation initially, that it's what they want to work on, so that, again, they feel connected and ownership and the things that we know drive some of that internal motivation. And then it's just clearing a path and giving them the tools they need to go and do that. Then it is just ongoing coaching. And then I'm going to come in with, well, I'd like you to work on this, and this is why. And I think this is the benefit and how we can do it together. And I think if you build the capacity of your immediate staff, and I always say to them, like, my job is to, when my tenure in this position is up, I want all of you to apply for the position I currently hold. It won't be mine anymore. It'll be up. I may apply for it, I may not. That's not really the problem. I want you to all be competition. And that's, to me, is what leadership is. I should be building the capacity of the people right there with me so that they are ready to do the next job and the next set of responsibilities and to take the school to the next step. And so my connection with those staff is very one-on-one, very small team, and very intimate and focused on them as people, because I'm not the leader of a team of, teachers. I'm a leader of people. I have to, and so when they're having a bad day, I jump in. And I might take something from them, or even if they're really reluctant, I'll take it from them. And I will everything that I want to see, I will role model as best I can. And I can't, again, claim to be perfect, but I try, and I want them to try. And then when they go back to their teams, which are the teaching staff, they hopefully will pass that on and instill that same connection and that same purpose and that same belonging into them, and then they will take that into their classrooms. And so when I'm teaching my classes, we start most lessons just talking about something that's just happened. And I think I said last time, or it's definitely in the first book, there is this fear about giving up 5 minutes to just being people. And because that's 5 minutes of content that we won't get to. But you will get through 10 minutes of extra content if you have engaged humans in front of you and they're with you. And so that 5 minutes, maybe not today and maybe not this week or whenever it might be, but eventually you putting that time into connection will build the capacity of these learners. And so that's my job as a teacher. But as a leader, I pass down what I can so that it can be passed down, so it can be passed down. And so, yeah, that's the best way I can describe it. I have to build the capacity of my team, because if they are not able to do their jobs effectively, that's because I haven't done my job effectively.
That's such a powerful position as a leader, Matt. So if you were going to give your teachers, so those that are in the classroom doing that, one thing, if there was one thing that you could do today to strengthen connection, apart from, so take 5 minutes. So in that 5 minutes, what would you say would be, someone listening and thinking, well, okay, so what do I do? How do I change my mode of operation? Give an idea of, one thing that you could do that would change that kind of mindset.
Something really, really practical. It's the start of the year over that side of the world. So this is perfect. I posted about this not that long ago on LinkedIn, so people may have seen it, but I can't stress enough how important it is. Teachers will create classroom rules, and it's a great activity. It's something that almost every classroom across the globe is going to be working on. But rules are all about control. Now, you can have the same activity and you can have a very similar kind of practice of running it with a small shift that will make it about connection and not control. And that is, come up with classroom norms. Rules are there to control and to stop you from doing something. Norms are about shared expectation. And so instead of I don't know, one person speaks at a time, that's a rule. A norm is, we respect when others are talking. Or it's just, and it seems really arbitrary at times, and that might not be the best example at this time. It's nighttime here after a long day at school, but it's shift it to norms and think about what you're expecting to see, rather than what you don't want to see, and help students to understand that they are. They're fallible and they will make mistakes and they will step out, but they're not breaking rules. They're just not acting in the way that your class has decided they would like everyone to kind of live up to. And so instead of looking down at a rule, we're living up to a standard, and we're going to build that together, and we're going to set a norm, and then we set another norm, and we're going to keep beating that, and we're going to do that together. And that activity then becomes less about how do we maintain and manage this class, because you don't manage people, not in a sense where that benefits everyone. A manager is there for the purpose of whatever their portfolio is, and they're trying to get people to act in a way that serves that portfolio. A leader or a teacher or a facilitator or a community, they act on the best interests of the people, all of them. Yeah. And that's what norms do. And so I would encourage you, when you're planning an activity like this, is to shift the language towards what you'd like to see, and not just you as the teacher, but your whole class. So all the students, what do they want to see? What kind of community do they want to be a part of? And therefore they'll buy into it potentially. Can't claim to work 100%, but they're more likely to buy into the idea of what we'd like it to look like, rather than what we don't want it to look like. And I think,
but isn't that, Matt, that's the dynamics of a classroom, so that everyone's shouting or speaking at the same time, then that means you're not heard. So that shared understanding of a norm, one person will speak so they can be heard.
Yeah.
See, I've got a vested interest in that, because that means I can be heard, or can be heard. So I'm just thinking back to Bernie Godwin was talking about breaking the punishment paradigm, which is all about controls. It's all about you must, you will, you should.
Yeah.
Where this could be something different, and I invest in it. It's the same thing, but it's just turned around with a different motivation and a different investment.
And that's what working within the system we have is all about. And that's very much what the Connection curriculum was about in a school sense, and that's very much what the Conundrum is about in a classroom sense with students. We can't wait, and it's it is exciting, but it's a little bit frustrating to still be saying really loudly, we need to stop waiting, because there's too many things that would need to be completely stripped back and changed for education to have the reform that a lot of people are talking about at scale. You can certainly do it in smaller groups, and I'm very excited to see there's lots of little projects that are going on that are going to change the game. And one of them is Global Village Learning. That will have significant change in the very near future. And I'm excited to see what that is, so that I can, wherever I may be, try and implement some of that, and we can scale it up. And that is the essence of the connection journey, which is in this book, in the first book. It's this idea of not waiting, and I have this metaphor of climbing a mountain, and I tell the story in the introduction of the book where I did the hike to Everest Base Camp, and it was just this, awesome walk. It was physically challenging enough to burn into my memory, but thinking back on that, that's exactly what teachers need to kind of tackle to address the connection conundrum. Is they need to start on this journey up the mountain, and they need to head for the summit and success, and then the next summit after that. And we can't wait. Explorers and people that climb these great peaks, they don't wait, they don't hesitate.
No,
they just
get
going. Yeah. And we need to get going. We need to stop waiting for the adventure to happen to us and actually go and start the work.
Absolutely. Matt, I'm going to put on the screen your sorry, let's try that again.
There it is.
Your website and your book, and mainly because the picture that you've just talked about is actually on the front of the book, isn't it? The mountain climbing, the mountain, as you just referred to. So how do people get to your material? So the easiest way probably is mattpittman.com.au, and if you click on the books, there are the books there, and there is your book ready for people to access. And I think from what I saw, if I just scan down, there are various different places where people can access it. Which is
from tomorrow it'll be available everywhere the first one was, and it's really surprised me to the places it ended up, but it was in countries all over the world and being bought and read, which is still just so bizarre. But I think online retailers or I always like to suggest it in your local library, so that people who perhaps don't have the means to buy a book can still get access to it. Look, I'd love as many people to read it and feed back to me again, like with the first, because to be honest, there's potentially a third book and a bit of a tie to the end of this. I've got a bit of a plan, but I'd like to have some input from readers. And I think, we started talking about marketing. Certainly the people's reactions and reviews, good or bad, to be perfectly honest with you, it's not perfect. If I was trying to get perfect, it wouldn't ever be finished. I think I'd be so lost in it. So I'd love to hear, and that's the biggest reward, I think, is when you hear back. So, and that'll shape the next book.
Absolutely. And I've as Matt's been talking, I've left that note. The research is clear. Real human connection improves mental well-being and outcomes in schools. I think that nobody could ask for better than that, Matt. I think that's
it's a good review.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get a copy of the book, all of the routes that you've said, get a physical copy or electronic copy, or however you read your books. There it is. There it is on the screen, Matt. So the connection curriculum and the connection conundrum. You've talked about system change. You've talked about the bigger picture. Can't wait to read this one. It'll be interesting to read the next one, and get you back and talk about what's going on. What you've said, Matt, is there are so many people talking about this. We've got to move beyond the kind of exam result, content, knowledge alone. There is more to education than that. And it is around the human interaction of the education process, and life changing, and things happen. I'm really grateful to have met you and to have the conversation again. I wish you well with this new book. I hope it gets around the world and into many people's hands, and more than that, get into people's heads around how they behave.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate the support, and I know that I watched many of the episodes, and it every now and then there was a little shout out, and I appreciated every single one. And yeah, look, we have such a privileged position to be able to have this job, and it's certainly not perfect, and it's a pressure pot, and I empathize with everyone who is struggling, thinking about leaving, has left. It doesn't reduce your impact that you have chosen to go and look at something else or whatever it might be. It's just, we can make this a better system, or not even a system. We can just make your school and your classroom a better place for the people within it. And if we can get enough classrooms all linked up and we can build a big enough kind of study sample, we can prove to everyone who has doubts that connection is the way forward. And
absolutely. Yeah.
The sooner we do that, the better, because there's quite a few kids that aren't getting the experience that they deserve within their education.
Matt, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It's such a powerful and necessary dialogue at this point. It's we'll keep conversing. We'll keep the conversation going. But thank you for this morning. Really appreciate the conversation. And we're going to have to go. So if you're still listening and you're with us, please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. Get involved in the conversation. And we will see you on the next episode.